we believe markets are efficient, and having an open competitive marketplace is a good way to get the lowest price for something that you want, why would we ever have a company? Because in a company, it's like a little mini monopoly. Inside that company, there's only one place I can go to get my accounts prepared, and it's my accounts department. Are they the most efficient? Maybe they're not. So why don't we just do everything in the marketplace? Well, the answer that Coase gave was transaction costs. And what he really meant was legal transaction costs. So if I don't really want a big company and I want to stay small, and now I'm going to enter into a contract with you to do my accounts, and I'm going to enter into a contract with you to do the packing of the goods and delivery, and I'm going to enter into a contract with you to do the marketing for my product. I end up with many different legal contracts, and for every legal contract I have to worry about, okay, are the terms right? What happens if it goes wrong? Is it going to be enforceable? It's a lot of effort. If you're dealing with assets or property, who owns them? So if I'm going to engage you to help me with some of the product development, and you to help me with some of the marketing around it, and then we create a new product and a new brand, who owns that intellectual property? Who owns the patent, for instance, or it could be a trade secret. Who owns it? Who has the rights to use it, and how? We have to address all of that in our contracts, and that takes a lot of time and effort, or at least it did traditionally. So the attractiveness of a company is that suddenly all this just comes within the company. Now it's very simple. The company owns all the assets. How are we going to divide up the profit? Doesn't matter. The company owns all the profit, and then internally, with a clear hierarchy, there'll be a board of directors. They'll decide what the policy is. That decides who gets what proportion of the profit. Maybe you get a bonus, maybe you don't. But there's now clear mechanisms in place for addressing all of these issues around how do we share out the profits, who owns the assets, and we now don't need this complicated network of contractual relationships. Instead, we just have a very simple hub and spoke model. All the employees have a contract of employment with the company. And all of those contracts of employment look pretty much the same, simple. So companies exist because they reduce the legal transaction costs. And that's been broadly true for 80 years, well, forever. Now, one of the, how are we doing for time, by the way? 20 minutes or so. Okay, need to go faster.
30 minutes.
30 minutes, cool. What can we do with smart contracts here? Well, I think some opportunities definitely arise. We can both use the software automation around contracts to make it easier to enter into them. So we can move towards, and we will move towards, a standardization of contracts, because now that we want to use software with them, we're not going to renegotiate the wording every time because we have a piece of code that's doing something valuable to us, and the code is not going to change every time. And so there'll be a standardization around what the legal written terms are. There'll just be some parameters in there, some variables. But the software can help us fill in those variables at the outset, and then automate performance to some degree, and automate encouraging good practices, business practices and processes around those agreements. So we can use the automation, we can use smart contract code to actually reduce the effort, reduce the costs involved of making contracts and keeping track of them. Which contracts have I entered into with who? Okay, great. This piece of software is telling me which contracts I've entered into, what the obligations are. Potentially, this can have quite a profound influence on what our kind of business ecosystems look like. Because as soon as you start to reduce legal transaction costs, now it can become more attractive to have more of a marketplace of people providing services and less of a concentration within large firms. So potentially, a question to ask is, okay, which industries currently have, maybe one very dominant company providing, a lot of vertical integration? Could that be done more efficiently if we started to separate that out into different functions that could be performed by different parties? That may not have been practical before because of Coase's argument, but it may be practical now. So there may be potentially large changes over time. And you could argue that maybe we're beginning to see that already. There has already been some trend for, in the 80s and 90s, you started to see subcontracting of services. Companies they wouldn't do the cleaning anymore. They wouldn't employ cleaners in their offices. They just have a contract with another firm that cleans the offices. But that tended to happen for, simple to describe big tasks. With smart contracts, potentially this can start to happen for much smaller tasks. And we can see marketplaces where before we had companies. Let me give you another example of how we might see a change and some new business opportunities arising. One of Mattereum's clients is a project called Ocean Protocol, and they are addressing a Coasean problem around using data sets for machine learning. So at the moment, if you want to produce a self-driving car, you need an algorithm to operate the vehicle, and you need to train that algorithm by a process of machine learning. You need huge amounts of data, and you train the algorithm using the data so that it becomes more and more capable in a wider range of circumstances. The data here is more important really than the algorithm. So if you are a small startup and you come up with a great new algorithm, but you only have relatively limited data, at the moment your only hope is that Google buys you out for a good sum. And if you don't like what Google offers you, you may as well give up, because you are never going to be able to acquire the data. They're never going to give you their data. You're never going to get enough data to train your algorithm for it to ever be commercially viable. So we have a sort of natural monopoly of data holders. Now at the moment, if you're a traditional car manufacturer like a Toyota or a BMW, you may be worried about this because you're worried that these dominant, maybe Uber, maybe Google, they will control the future. They will be the only companies that have viable algorithms for operating the vehicles. So your business is going to be affected. What Ocean Protocol are doing is, again, trying to break away from this need to concentrate the asset, the data, in one company. So their technology allows one party to train its algorithm on someone else's data without that party giving its data to the first one, and without this one giving its algorithm to the other party. So I won't even try and explain the technology right now, but it's you're using some of the new blockchain-based technology, smart contracts around that, to allow something to now happen more in a marketplace environment, where now potentially you can have many different sources of data, all being made commercially available to anyone who wants to use them for a fee, but without kind of losing control of the data, without the uncertainty around who owns what. So again, potentially there's many potential applications of this. It's potentially quite far-reaching.